Hey everybody, Todd Orchide here from PM Assist again with our new short series here on a custom lease agreement. So we did our series on custom management agreements. Now we're starting a new series on custom leases. So this is just a short video to kind of go over some highlights. Our full video consulting course of PM Assist Insider goes over this in great detail. The first lesson is over an hour long. But we're just going to do a few minutes here and go over some key lease paragraphs in our free content this month. So, why do you need a custom lease? And I know it says why a custom PMA, sorry about that. Why do you need a custom lease? Just like your PMA, your lease needs to reflect how you actually are doing business. It's not something that should just be generic that every realtor in the state can use. Your property management company is unique. You do business in a unique way. Your lease needs to reflect that just like your management agreement does. Also, something to think about is your state realtor association. Most likely those contracts they're writing for management agreements and leases are not written by people who do property management day in and day out. Usually those are committees who are put together of realtors who do some property management. So that's not the best source for the best possible lease that you could have. So I discourage using those state forms. The other thing about this is some of those state forms are only updated every few years. Case law is constantly changing. Statutes don't change as often, but case law is changing constantly. So, even just your own cases in court, where you go and you learn something new from a judge, you might want to add something to your lease to deal with it. So, you can do that with a custom lease. You can't do it with a state form. And, of course, your own company policies and procedures are constantly changing. You want that to be reflected in your lease. You want your lease to reflect how you're doing business. You don't want it to just be some formality. You want it to actually tell people who are signing with you what they can expect from your business. So, of course, the big warning I always give when I'm talking about anything about contracts, make sure you get a contract reviewed by a competent, very experienced landlord-tenant attorney in your jurisdiction. Just because this works for us doesn't mean it will work for you. Every market's different. But let's talk about what's a few key clauses that you should have in your custom lease. So first you'll see here, obviously the term section. You wouldn't think there would be much unique in just the term where the start and end dates of the lease are. But we do a few different things here. So first, we have a non-standard lease term option. So most tenants take our standard 12-month lease, but we give every tenant the option of choosing their own lease term. So like name your own price on Priceline, name your own lease term with our company. So they get to pick a lease of anywhere between 6 to 18 months. And of course, they pay us a monthly admin fee for that privilege if they choose to do that. And they also pay higher rent. So, we cover that in detail in other lessons in our fee maxing course. But, just as a quick going over, that's something that you can offer the ability for tenants. It's a great service. We also have a clause here that says if management terminates for any reason whatsoever, whether the owner terminates it or we do, or the owner defaults, whatever the case may be, we give the tenant the option to terminate their lease at their discretion. And the reason for that is the tenant rented from you, or they rented from us, a licensed professional property management company. If the owner is terminating management and taking over themselves, and they're going to manage the property themselves, they're not a licensed professional like you are. That, in my view, isn't fair to the tenant. The tenant might have gone out and done a lot of research on your management company before they signed a lease with you. They thought they were going to be dealing with your business, and now suddenly they're dealing with an individual landlord who they might have wanted to avoid when they were looking for a new property. So our view is that's not fair. The tenant should be able to decide to break the lease at that point, and that's what this clause here deals with. Credit reporting. So this is a big part of a resident benefits package. We have a free course on resident benefits packages you can take also that goes over all of the details of that. But just as a component of that, credit reporting is something you should definitely be offering. It's a benefit to the tenants who pay their rent on time. So, a tenant who pays their rent on time, month after month, can see their credit ratings jump by 40 points on average. So some tenants who even get more than that. And it doesn't take long, usually about 3 or 4 months, and they can get that benefit if you're reporting every month. The other thing, of course, is it discourages people from paying late. If they know that there's going to be a negative report to the credit bureau if they don't pay their rent on time, that's another incentive for them to pay you first rather than their other creditors. So my advice is implement credit reporting. Some credit reporting is only done on good reports. I don't recommend using that. I recommend using a service that reports both good and bad for every tenant. We use CredHub. If you're interested in them, talk to us. We can get you referred over to them. They do a great job for us. We've been using them for years, and they report both good and bad to the credit bureaus. So highly recommend adding that to your resident benefit package. Next is credit contingency fees. Full details, of course, in our fee maxing course, but the short version of this is you have tenants who obviously fall within a wide range of scores, depending on how you score your applicants. Maybe you have your own scoring system. Maybe you use a Vantage score from TransUnion. Maybe you're using a just credit score, just that's all you're using to score an application. Let's say you're using credit scores, and let's say your company allows a credit score of 600 to 850, so you know 600 and up basically. Someone who has a credit score of, say, 840, so they're at the upper end of the credit scoring range, is obviously a much lower risk than someone with a 625. Both of them meet your minimum criteria, so you're going to say yes to both of them. You're going to approve both of those applicants. But one of them is obviously a better applicant than the other. So one of them should pay more than the other. That tenant with that low score should be paying more than the tenant with that very high score. The way to deal with this is a credit contingency fee. So the tenant at that lower score gets approved, but they would have to pay an extra fee. You keep that fee because you're the one who does the work to collect the rent when someone is late or doesn't pay. So that goes to you. You could also charge extra rent if you want a benefit to the owner, but I highly recommend these. These are a big source of revenue. Make sure you're collecting these on those lower scoring tenants. Applying payments. We recommend that as long as your state allows it, you should be applying any payment you receive from the tenant to the oldest charges first. Never just apply it to the current month's rent and let prior unpaid balances go. Obviously, there's some states that aren't going to allow this. Some states require you to apply it to the rent first. But outside of that, if your state's not going to require it, always apply it towards the oldest charges first. Late payment. I recommend zero tolerance policies on paying the rent late. You should make the rent due on the first, and if they haven't paid it, then you charge a late fee on the second. Don't provide a grace period. None of this is helpful to anyone. If you give a grace period, then your due date isn't really your due date. It just implies that you're going to be lenient on not paying on time. So, whatever the earliest date your state will allow to charge a late fee, that's when you should charge it. Make sure you also have a date in your lease where you're not required to accept the rent anymore. If they haven't paid, for us it's the 5th. If they haven't paid by the 5th, we're no longer required to accept it from them. We can return their money and just go ahead and file an eviction if we want to. Are we going to do that? Probably not, but we want that right. The other thing is, however, just like you want to charge the late fee at the earliest possible date, you also want to charge the maximum amount that your state will allow. Don't be lenient on these fees. It should be painful if someone pays their rent late. Charge the maximum you can get away with. And sometimes this is going to be just by local convention where the judges will just kind of agree amongst themselves. Even though there's not a statutory limit, they kind of impose a limit. So just go by whatever that is. Also charge additional fees for bounced checks. And if you have to post a cure notice or send out a 3-day notice, there should be additional fees for that also. If the property is sold, this is a huge hassle dealing with security deposits. This is a clause we recommend in your lease that says if the property is sold, the deposit gets automatically returned to the tenant. No questions asked. You don't want to deal with the title company or the closing attorney trying to deal with credits and debits on the closing or on the settlement statement. Just don't deal with it. Make it the buyer's problem. Return the deposit to the tenant, and let the buyer deal with the tenant to get a deposit from them. Don't make the buyer's problem your problem. So that's again just a few quick clauses. Our full lesson on this in our video consulting course is over an hour long. If you want to sign up for that, here's a QR code you can use. Scan that real quick with your phone. Sign up for our PM Assist Insider, and then you can get the full courses. We have the full custom management agreement. We talk about automation. We've got obviously the course now on a custom lease. Lots of information there, so feel free to sign up for that. If not, we'll see you here in a couple weeks for part 2 of our custom lease series.